Hello there, welcome to One on One. My name is Bridget Otu. Weed, marijuana. I hope you're not one of those who shiver or quiver when they hear weed or think of aimless, mad, or people Rasta are the ones using it. This, what people call a magical drug, is given millions to countries like Canada, the USA. Why has Ghana not taken advantage of it? What is the real challenge to this? There are advocates in Ghana, like late former UN General Secretary Kofi Annan, the boss of Ghana Standards Authority, Professor Alex Dodu, sports analyst, and the president of Hempire Association of Ghana, Nana Kwaku Agyemang, and actor John Dumelo have been advocating for the legalization of it. Today, we have one of the advocates in our studio to discuss the challenge to legalizing hemp or cannabis in this country and the understanding of it. How do we get people to understand that it is positive for the country rather than negative? And as a former host of You and the Police, I have been part of several operations with the Ghana Police Service, and with the benefit of hindsight, I regret that so much because I had no knowledge of what it is that we were doing. Nana Kwaku, welcome to One on One.
Thank you very much, Bridget.
What's the fear? You know, I deliberately said weed. You know, when you hear it, you're thinking, oh my God, aimless people. But I'm telling you, trust me, doctors, pharmacists, people who are doing it, it's not your regular Joe. At all. What's the fear? Why are people so afraid to just talk about it, to go into? What's the fear?
Well, I think it stems back over a period of time. You know, marijuana, cannabis, weed, Tampi, whatever you want to call it, Sensimilia, has been bastardized by the West for a very long time. And it's been something that we've taken up from the West. We've taken it up and we've run with it. And it's just like when, 15 years ago, when you saw someone with dreadlocks, children would run away from that person because parents would have told their children that we see someone who's got locks, it's a bad person, he'll take you away, he'll do this and that. It's a similar thing with cannabis. In this day and age, you have intellectuals, elite intellectuals, who will tell you that if you consume weed through smoking it, then you will become mad. You've got a leading psychiatric nurse, if you like, is a doctor, in fact, Dr. Akwesi Osei, he will tell you that if you smoke it, you will be mad. There's no empirical evidence at all. And if you go to the psychiatric wards, we're not even equipped to even determine that anyway, but they will like to point you to one or two people and said, oh, that person has smoked weed.
But the overdose of everything is bad, really. It's not even hemp. There are people in psychiatric hospitals who are there because of relationship failure, not smoking weed.
No, well, you see, the thing about it is there are many factors that can trigger a psychiatric case. Right. Smoking cigarette can trigger it off. Drinking alcohol can trigger it off. A relation breakdown can trigger it off. There's so many different things in the social infrastructure that could trigger off what we would term as madness. And you talk about overdose. If you consume weed to the point where, let's say, you overdose, the only thing you'll do is sleep. There's nothing else you can do. You will just go to sleep. You may have the munchies before, crispy things you'll want to be eating and what have you, biscuits, peanuts, etc. But apart from that, you're going to sleep. When you overdose on alcohol, you may jump into your car, drive it erratically, kill a few people on the way, have an accident. That's from the overdose of alcohol. Right. But yet that is legal. That is something that is legal. Even smoking of cigarettes, we now caution you on the side of the box and we say, look, this will kill you if you consume it. People are purchasing it, they're patronizing it, they're using it. But these things are legal. I think there's so many things, so many aspects of this that we have to understand, and we've not taken time to understand it. We've just run along with white racist propaganda and said, no, this thing is bad.
But now they are even changing because they've seen the benefits of it. But I want to take you back. I mean, when you say 15 years ago or maybe 20 years ago, if you saw somebody, with dreads, then you're thinking that, okay, either they're going to be mad or because they smoke weed. But is it really years ago? Was it not just last year that a young man, brilliant young man who gained admission to Achimota School, but the school would deny him because of his dreadlocks?
Yeah. Two young boys.
Two young boys.
Two young boys.
Tyrone and Magai, right?
Yeah.
So it's not
Tyrone Magai.
Magai, yes. So it's not 15 years ago. Why is that still prevalent? Why? Why are we still seeing this just as early as just a couple of months ago?
Well, it's funny. I mean, because you've got Magai and you've got
the
other boy who's in Krabia.
Krabia.
And they both entered into the school. But you see, what we have to understand about that is these schools that have been established with the mottos and the songs that we sing and all this kind of thing, the origin isn't ours. The origin doesn't belong to us. It belongs to those people who colonized us. All these big St. Augustine and this, that. These are schools that white people established. They had their white values as part of the structure of the school. And when they left, then we took it on. Right? Now, one of the things you need to understand is that one of the things our colonizers used to do with us to reduce our self-esteem was to cut our hair. That is what they used to do. They used to cut our hair down to the basic minimum, and that would make us feel much less of ourselves. The pride that we had in ourselves would have been reduced to an all-time low level. This is one of the principles they have in the schools right now, because look, you've got Nkrabia, you've got Magai. They were both going to Achimota School. And one thing that was clear about it, the girls of Asian descent, the girls of European descent, they were able to have their hair flowing down. But all of us of African descent, it was denied because of the influence of the white people in establishing that school in the first place. It's a racist practice that we have adorned and believe it is the right way to go, whereas it isn't the right way to go. So you're right. Perhaps it's not 20 years down the line. It's even a year ago.
Yes.
But these two boys have turned out to be the brightest sparks. I mean, Nkrabia now goes to Ghana International School, and Magai is still at Achimota School.
But it was shocking and shameful that the Achimota School, was unapologetic about it. Their association, the All Students Association, we issued a statement to back the decision of the school, which was rooted, like you're saying, and I say same, I hold the same view, that rooted in colonial racist foundation.
Well, they're neo-colonialists, aren't they? And let's face it, like over 75% of Ghanaians all subscribe to this neo-colonialist type of thinking. It's something it's ingrained in the mind. It's something that affects the entire continent, to be totally truthful with you. Because, here's me, I'm a Ghanaian, unable to speak fluently my own language, Asante Tree, but I'm able to speak the English.
Right.
You go to Senegal or just across the road there to Burkina, they're able to speak French fluently, but not able to speak their own language. It's neo-colonialism, and we've been unable to get rid of that cloak that covers us so that we can now be ourselves, recognizing the richness of our own culture and taking that forward in everyday life. So, when you relate that back to the experience of cannabis or marijuana or whatever you want to call it, the Narcotics Control Commission, in the publications that they put out, have called cannabis Bonsam Tawa. I mean, it can't get any worse than that, because this is a plant that God has put there. And we claim to be so religious. We'll go to church. There's people at church even now. Today, right now, they're at church. Instead of seeking employment or working, they're at church. That we're religious fanatics. But there are certain basics we fail to recognize. That cannabis plant is something that was put on the earth by God. And it has so many different uses, so many different healing properties, that we've refused to recognize it because we've taken on somebody else's culture, we've taken on somebody else's principles, and we've thrown our principles away.
Right. We'll talk about, law enforcement and what, if you come to Ghana here, beyond Narcotic Controls Board, what the police is even empowered to do and the kind of swoops that they do. And I've been part of a lot of swoops when I hosted that program, and I thought we were catching bad people. And like you said, at the time I was ill-informed, had no idea what was happening. But the more you read, you're like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? So I want to talk about the fact that the hemp is in a lot of products that is legal. Almost every hair product, the fundamental, the main ingredient is hemp. So why is it that we're using it there, but it's illegal? You can't plant it. What's the?
Well, let me differentiate for you. Let me break the thing down for you. You have cannabis sativa, you have cannabis ruderalis, you have cannabis indica. Now, in Ghana's situation, for example, the law was passed in March 2020, which gave the minister the power to award licenses for the cultivation of hemp. Now, there's a classic difference between hemp and marijuana. Right. Now, what's the difference? Yeah. The difference is that the tetrahydrocannabidiol within the hemp is much less.
That was so easy to pronounce. I struggled to pronounce tetrahydrocannabidiol. Okay,
well, it's short, THC. Right? That is the compound within the cannabis that makes you high. Yes. Now, the law said that the minister has the power to award licenses for people who wish to cultivate industrial hemp. Now, industrial hemp is exactly as it says. It's industrial. The chair you're sitting in, it will make it. The studio we're in, it can make it. It can produce bioplastics. As you know, stuff for your hair, various cosmetics, shampoo, soap. Back in the 1920s, Henry Ford made a car out of hemp and fueled it with hemp as well. There are light aircrafts that are flying around the world now that have been made totally out of industrial hemp, and they are fueled as well by hemp. Right? That is where we are. So we seem to get mixed up, and I'll give you a classic. I had an interview on Metro TV about 2 days ago. Okay. We were talking about the Supreme Court and this and that and what have you. Now, I'm giving them the same explanation that industrial hemp only has 0.3 THC, and that is all that the law allows us to cultivate. The law is specific in saying that we cannot cultivate cannabis for recreational use. Section 43 is specific. Now, whilst I'm having this interview with TV3, the images with Metro TV, the images that are being portrayed are of cannabis with THC much more than
the 0.23.
Exactly. You are seeing people's hands with Rizzler, and the weed is in there, and this and that and what. All the images create this serious confusion. I'm talking about industrial hemp. The interview is about industrial hemp, but the images that you're portraying to the public at large is about marijuana, is about weed. And this is the biggest problem. You see, the media, I think they're transfixed on getting eyeballs. And so, on many occasions, they give the wrong impression. They paint and tell the wrong story. Do you understand? And that adds to confusion. It was the Christian community.
It could be that it's not deliberate, it's also that they don't know.
But I'm explaining it to them. I could be explaining it to you now, and perhaps there might be a cutaway, and you'll show cannabis, and you'll show somebody smoking some weed.
I'll make sure we don't
Meanwhile,
do that. I'll make sure
we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
So that is one of the biggest problems. When you say about the fear, that is one of the biggest problems, because somehow, I don't know, we fear talking about people using weed recreationally. Meanwhile, Ghana is ranked number 3 on the continent for the use of cannabis recreationally. And, you know, I always ask, so who are the people who are smoking it then? Because it's normally associated with people who have hairstyles like mine.
Yours.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, to get
people who look like me are doing it.
Exactly. It's people who look like you.
Yes, me.
You know, it's the policemen, it's the army personnel, it's the lawyers, it's the doctors, it's the nurses, it's the parliamentarians, it's the judges, it's the prosecutors. These are the people who go back home.
This is the first time my phone is.
Who go back home and smoke within the security of their home. And yet they come out publicly to say, no, it should be down on the low. It shouldn't be this and that and what. But they're the ones who are smoking it, because you don't have 5,000 Rastafarians in Ghana.
I need to understand something here. The law allows for industrial, right? And yet for recreational, like you said, I mean, a lot of people are doing it. And there's a certain fear there. Do people even know that there are differences in the plants? And how do you know that this one has, you know, is it 80? THC of 0.23.
Yeah.
Explain that to me, because
well,
I don't
they're
get
different.
It. Yeah.
If you cultivate industrial hemp, it can grow to 16 or 20 feet tall. It's thin, and it just zooms up. If you're cultivating cannabis, that grows outwards, and it produces the buds that, when dried and processed, you can put in your pipe or put in your Rizla. Put in toffees, cakes,
and that's what a lot of
cooking.
people know.
Yeah, of course, it's lovely. Right. You know, from the industrial hemp you can extract the cannabidiol, but you can also extract the cannabidiol from the cannabis as well. But of course, it will have a lot more THC than cannabidiol from the hemp. And the cannabidiol from the hemp can be used for autism, epilepsy, degenerative diseases. It's anti-inflammatory, it can deal with depression, anxiety, and a whole host of health issues. And so can cannabis with high THC. In fact, the cannabis with the THC deals with all the cancers. You know, the pharmaceuticals won't want you to say this, but to be perfectly honest with you, when it comes to cannabis with THC of 5% and over, it can totally eradicate cancer within the body, whether it be breast cancer, throat cancer, prostate cancer, whatever cancer, cannabis can actually deal with it and knock it on the head. You see? So people need to understand that the law as it stands right now isn't talking about recreational cannabis. Isn't talking about cannabis for adult use.
Is that what you're advocating for?
The advocacy is about the use of industrial hemp. What we say is this: look, if we're to be real about the whole thing, we need to have the conversation about the legalization of cannabis for recreational use, but mentally, we're not ready for that yet.
What's the challenge there? Why are we not mentally ready to legalize for recreational purposes cannabis?
Well, as I said, because there's this phobia about everybody going mad, you know, when
because of the high percentage of
THC, but it's not the case. I mean, look, people have been smoking cannabis for years in Holland. When I was studying in the UK, people would take trips to Holland for the weekend just to go and smoke, and then they'd come back and go and do their work, or back in the universities, etc. Nobody's going mad. In Canada, they legalized recreational use of cannabis 2018. No one's going mad. Instead, over the 4-year period, they've added 43 billion to their gross domestic product.
Yes.
No one's going mad.
Yes.
In the USA, many states again.
Yes.
Look, you look in New York.
They allow you to carry a certain quantity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, for recreational
you can carry, you can smoke wherever you want to be. No one's going mad. But we still hold on to these things, and it calls for a much broader debate of all the stakeholders, because we're all stakeholders. Whether you understand it or not, you're a stakeholder. And it calls for a broader debate of all stakeholders. Those who are elitist intellectually, they should be there, so that we can discuss the whole thing, so that we can help them to understand actually what they are talking about, instead of just saying, oh, it's a bad thing, it's the devil's thing, because it's not. Alcohol is more the devil's product than anything else, if the truth be told. And alcohol kills. Cannabis hasn't killed anyone.
Okay, so are we in a situation, especially for a continent like ours, where we're third in the use of cannabis, for recreational purposes? Are we in that spot where we're waiting again for the West to legalize it in all the countries and say, oh, it's good before we follow? And in this case, they'll probably have taken over the market, and then we'll again be wondering, why is that decision?
That challenge is there. And I must say that Malawi have legalized. Malawi was a large producer of tobacco. The president of Malawi came out himself when he realized that they were down in terms of GDP by over $200 million US. And he said, look, farmers, stop cultivating tobacco because it's not going anywhere. Everyone start cultivating weed. And that's what they're doing, right? South Africa is the same. Zambia is the same. Zimbabwe is the same. Lesotho is the same. Eswatini is the same. And they're making huge profits. They're building up their economy with the cultivation of weed for recreational use. The one thing they've done is they've said, okay, our people won't participate in it, and we'll cultivate it for export, and they're doing that, and they're benefiting. We are not doing anything like that. We are preventing ourselves from coming in on the market just on industrial hemp at 0.3%, because we are totally ignorant that industrial hemp is not for recreational purposes. And no matter how many times you put that
more and more
message
people are going
across,
to be taking it for recreational purposes.
Yeah, that's what they think. Meanwhile, you can't. You can't. It's not something that you will ingest through smoke. It's not something that you will make toffees with. It's something that you can build a house with. It's something you can build a hospital with. Something that you can build a school with.
Wait, so help me. So in other words, even with the power, the legalization of it, it is just for industrial purposes, which
Strictly.
does not allow for making the toffees, smoking it, nothing of a sort.
And
yet there is more illegal use of it for recreational purposes, not the industrial one, but the one with a higher percentage of THC.
Well, there's bigger farms there, of course. I mean,
Yes.
you've seen that they've been hitting the farms.
I know.
I mean, look, the fact of the matter is Ghana has been cultivating weed for generations. And when you go to these farms, what you will find out is that it was a hand-me-down from great-grandfather to grandfather to father and to son. And they've been cultivating for years, selling to Benin, selling to the Ivory Coast, selling to Nigeria. It's something. And the fact of the matter is the authorities know. Look, let me tell you something. Do you think you could have a farm of 80 hectares and no one in authority knows about it? It was a tip-off that led them there. And that's how these farms are raided. There's always some infighting. Oh, my cut has been reduced, okay, I'm going to tell. And they tell. But let me tell you this, apart from that, these people who are supposed to be the ones, the law, the authorities and whatever, they are paid. And they accept that money willingly, and they turn a blind eye, and they allow the cannabis to be cultivated and to be shipped here or there or what have you, blah, blah, blah. It's how they earn their money. It's how they earn their money. Let me tell you, from the police to immigration to narcotics control, everybody's involved. Everyone's involved. And we should know that this is the case. Look, we've had cocaine turn into what before? from HMV Benjamin.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? We've had cocaine that was confiscated from Aflao and it's on its way up to Accra. It has disappeared. How has it disappeared? It's in the hands of the authorities and it's gone missing. Why? How? It's because they're all a part of the whole thing.
Is there any stakeholder conversation going on about it for recreational purposes? Yes, we know industrial.
No, there isn't. There isn't. And as I say...
Well, why is it closed completely?
It's too early. It's too early. You see, the powers that be... You've got to educate people first. And that's why I'm sitting here with you to say that, look, the Christian community are against it because they do not understand that what the law has said we can do is not for recreational use. We just have to keep hammering this all the time. It's not for recreational use. We can produce hempcrete that can build your church. People need to know that. We can produce bioplastic, biodegradable plastic, whereby every time, exactly, every time it rains, because our drains are choked with plastic, everything overflows, we get flooding, etc., etc. If we cultivate industrial hemp, we can produce plastic bottles that will biodegrade in 16 to 20 weeks. So if you left it here on the floor of your studio, it would disappear. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's got to be a good thing. Yeah. Look, when you look at the environment, we're talking about recently on the news, I've seen this stuff, we've raided the Galamsey. You can look at the water, how dirty the water is, how poison the water is. If you cultivate industrial hemp in those waters, you will eventually clean those waters up, because the industrial hemp absorbs all the toxins in its leaves and everything. And you can cultivate it after 16 weeks and still sell it, still gain money from it. It's the same with the land that has been used for large-scale mining or galamsey. You've got farmers who originally received money and now they're sitting and they're looking at the land and they can't do anything to the land. If we cultivate industrial hemp on all those toxic lands, we will eventually reclaim the land. We're talking about land reclamation on a large scale, which will now allow the farmers to go back to the land and start cultivating high-value crops.
Okay.
The industrial hemp itself, when you cultivate industrial hemp, it sequestrates the carbon out of the atmosphere. It absorbs the carbon. Now we're talking about reducing global warming.
Right.
And so it propagates that phobia. It adds to the phobia.
Okay.
Because people just can't tell the difference.
Nana Agyemang, we're taking a break. Welcome back to One on One, and I hope you're leaving your comments on our pages at Metro TV Ghana and at One on One page on Twitter and Facebook. I still have football analyst and also the president of Hempire Association of Ghana. Our conversation is on the, some call it the magical miracle drug that unfortunately we are so against because of colonialist and its history that is grounded in racism. Nana, welcome back. I want to know what Hemp Association does. What does Hemp Association really does?
Okay, it's in fact it's the Hempire Association of Ghana.
Hempire Association of Ghana.
Yeah.
Yes.
We want to build a hempire.
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 Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And there was a funny story of how we got that name actually,
right.
because
Go ahead, tell me.
It was going to be the Hemp Association of Ghana. We went down to RGD, submitted our application for months. They couldn't tell us anything. The Registrar General's Department? Yeah, they couldn't tell us anything. I went down there fuming one day and then they said, look, you can't use the word hemp because the word hemp is illegal. I said, have you heard of Hemel Hempstead? It's a place in the United Kingdom, and there's also places in the USA that are called hemp. So it's a word. How can it be illegal? But no matter what I said,
they wouldn't budge.
They wouldn't budge. So I called my deputy CEO at the time, who's actually the father of that boy at GIS, Ras Aswad Nkrabio.
Okay.
Yeah, Nkrabia. And he said, look, just add ire to it.
Ire. And ire is not even like a good word. I mean, it's like ire.
Yeah,
Oh my.
He said, just add that, then it'll read Hempire.
Ire. Ooh.
So I did. And what I did, I wrote it on a piece of paper, and I opened the door to the lawyer's office who I'd been bantering with. I was so furious, I wanted to tip everything upside down, and I just threw it in there and left. And a week or two after, it was registered. Anyway, it's an NGO, it's an advocacy body. It's the body that really talks about what I've been talking about, differentiating, making clear the differences between the 2 strains or the 3 strains, because I told you about indica, sativa, ruderalis.
Right.
And basically we work with other civil society organizations to bring about a friendly pressure to parliamentarians, the Ministry of Defence and Interior, and all other formal bodies that are there, so that we can try to enlighten them about cannabis. And basically we worked with the Parliamentary Select Committee of Defence and Interior. We worked with other civil society organisations, Drug Policy Advocacy Unit and other prominent CSOs, because there are quite a lot of CSOs out there, but they don't make as much noise as we do. But they are out there working behind the scenes. And eventually we got that Section 43 drafted. And it was an amendment that was placed in the bill, and eventually in 2020 the bill was passed, and in May 2020 the President also assented to the bill. So that body is there. It's a non-governmental organisation. But we also have the Hempire Agric Ghana Limited.
Agric
Ghana Limited, right. Which, as it says, is a limited company. Now, what we do there is we have ridden on the back of the advocacy, and we're now talking about the business. And we're putting the business out in the open so that farmers who currently cultivate illegally can switch across from illegal cultivation to legal cultivation.
Legal cultivation of?
Illegal cultivation of cannabis with the THC, for recreational use.
To industrial.
Yes. Now, what we've done, we've given them 4 options. We've said, come to Hempire Agric Ghana, we'll give you 4 options. First option, register with us, 10,000 Ghana cedis. We will ensure that you've got all your appropriate identification documents ready. We'll register your company. We'll assist you with opening a bank account. We'll provide you with an off-takers agreement, and we'll prepare your business plan for you. Because you can't just write a letter to the Narcotics Control Commission and say, oh, I'd like a license. There's a criteria. And by and large, you must have all these things in a row. Now, what we say to you, because we have a land bank earmarked of 39,000 acres, that's the length and breadth of Ghana. We say to you, when you register with us for 10,000 Ghana cedis, you'll be working on a land space of 35 acres. You will cultivate and harvest 25,000 kilos, and we will pay you $500,000 for that.
Wow. And
you will harvest 3 times a year. The second option is you will register 15,000. You work on a larger land space of up to 60, 65 acres. Yes, you'll provide 50,000 kilos of hemp. You'll be paid 1 million for that. You'll harvest 3 times a year. Third option, you register with us, you pay us 20,000 Ghana cedis. You work on a land space of 90 acres. You'll harvest 75 acres. 75 kilos. We will pay $1.5 million. Once again, you harvest 3 times a year. The last option is you register with us, you pay 25,000 Ghana cedis. You work on a land space of up to 130 acres. You will provide 100,000 kilos, you'll get paid 2.4 kilos for that. So we provide a service, 2.4 million.
Right.
We provide a service ensuring that you get all your administrational paperwork correct in a row.
And you will not be heckled by anybody.
No, so that you can now apply. We can't give you any licenses because we don't have the power to give you the license. We ourselves will also apply for licenses. We will give you access to the land bank, of which you will pay 100 Ghana cedis per acre per year for 3 years on a rolling contract. We will provide you with certified seeds that are 0.3% in THC.
Right.
We will train you accordingly because many won't know how to cultivate the hemp differently to cultivating cannabis for recreational use. And we will supervise you because we have a vested interest in you producing your yield, because when you produce your yield, the company will also make money. Right? So those are the 4 options we've given. And to date, we have probably over 150 farmer groups that are registered with us.
Wow.
They are quietly sitting there waiting to take advantage of the law so that they can start to cultivate.
Wow. Nana, I'm interested in, what you just said and the breakdown of it, because I would want you to go over it again. So the least is 10,000 cedis for the registration.
Yeah.
Allows you for 39 acres.
35 acres.
35 acres. And you harvest 3 times?
You harvest 3 times.
$500,000.
$500,000
right.
because you'll cultivate 25,000 kilos. Yeah. The second option, you register 15,000 Ghana cedis. You work on a land space of up to 60 or 65 acres. You'll harvest 50,000 kilos. We'll pay 1 million for that. The third option, you register 20,000 Ghana cedis. You're working on a land space of up to 90 acres. You'll harvest 75,000 kilos. We'll pay 1.5 million US dollars for that. The last option is you'll pay a registration fee of 25,000 Ghana cedis. You work on a land space of up to 130. You provide 100,000 kilos. We'll pay 2.4.
Okay.
Now, we deliberately give you more acreage than you actually need, because 1 acre you can cultivate 1,000 kilos. So if we give you 35 acres, you will only use 25 acres to cultivate and harvest 25,000.
25, okay.
Now, what we say to you is in your final year of the contract, at that time you should know how you are going to add value to what you cultivate. We don't want to follow the cocoa model, where basically you've got cocoa farmers,
from them
you're just exporting.
Yeah.
They've never tasted chocolate.
Right,
Their kids don't go to top class school because when they provide 100,000 kilos of beans, they only get 2,500 US dollars. It's the biggest rip-off known to man. They don't add any value to it.
Yeah.
They don't make any chocolates or anything. They just give the raw produce away. So we say it will take you 2 years, no matter which option you take, to accumulate significant enough cash and to determine now how you wish to add value. With the additional land space, you can put up some factory or whatever it is if you want to produce CBD oil, if you want to produce hempcrete, if you want to produce bioplastics, if you want to produce briquet, if you want to produce wood, if you want to go in the textile industry, if you want to produce cosmetics, if you want to produce animal feed, if you want to produce protein for us as human beings, you have additional land space in which you can do that and expand your business. And we say we will only take 1 harvest from you so that you will use the other 2 processing and producing and putting whatever it is you're manufacturing now on the market.
Okay.
Because you will earn much more by adding value than just simply cultivating, harvesting and exporting.
And Nana, when you say that you have 100 farm groups waiting. You mean waiting on the narcotics control?
Waiting on the law.
Oh.
Waiting on the, because the law was passed 2 years ago, then we were waiting on the legislative instrument. Now, the legislative instrument is a document that operationalizes the law.
Absolutely.
For example, we don't know how much the license fee would cost. Yeah, there are things in the legislative instrument that would tell you how the Narcotics Control Commission would come to regulate and ensure that you are actually cultivating industrial hemp. They would have to come and take samples, they would test it to make sure it's 0.3, they'd have to come onto your farm to ensure that you're not cultivating cannabis for recreational use, and a whole host of things. Now,
but do you envisage that challenge, that happening?
It can't happen, and I'm going to tell you why it can't happen. The reason why you cannot cultivate hemp and cannabis at the same time is because industrial hemp is a male plant. The cannabis is a female plant. We all know what happens when male and females come together, don't they? They produce something wonderful.
Right.
Now, basically, the industrial hemp plant will cross-pollinate the cannabis plant for recreational use and render it 100% useless. Instead of producing the buds that you would process and dry, that people could smoke, you'd put in your toffees, put in your cakes or whatever, it will now only produce seed. So you can't cultivate cannabis for industrial...
You can't cheat nature.
You can't. you just can't do it.
Right.
And it's worse than that. The fact of the matter is, you cannot cultivate cannabis for recreational use within a 50-mile radius of anyone who is cultivating industrial hemp.
Why? How?
Because it will cross-pollinate.
Ooh, again, yeah.
It will cross-pollinate. Within a 50-mile radius, it will cross-pollinate. So I always say to the Narcotics Control Commission and to the Ministry of Defence and Industry that this will be a classic way of ensuring we reduce illegal cultivation. Because once we start cultivating industrial hemp, if they should attempt and they're within a 50-mile radius, their crop is going to be spoiled. The only thing they can do...
And you would lose. I mean, the farmer would lose.
They would
because
lose,
if
yes.
you try to do that,
they would lose.
Yeah.
So the only thing they could now do is cultivate cannabis for recreational use indoors. They couldn't cultivate outside again. Now, to cultivate indoors, you need huge greenhouses. You're talking hydroponics and all that kind of stuff. Lot of investment. A lot of money is required there. How many farmers would actually be able to do that? You see? So they want to clamp down on the cultivation of cannabis for recreational use.
Purpose, yeah.
But and people are fighting against the law. But in fact, if the law comes out positively and all the other things, everything is all equal. In fact, the cultivation of industrial hemp is the beginning of eradicating illegal cultivation of cannabis for recreational use.
And earlier I asked the question, before the break, that what has been the biggest challenge? Is the church the biggest challenge? How do we break it so we can have the conversation about it?
Well, I think it's hypocrisy, isn't it? I mean, the people who go to church, they're smoking it. They should know. They are smoking it. They are part of the reason why Ghana is ranked number 3 on the continent for cannabis use. They're part of the reason, right? But yes, they are a powerful group of people. They form possibly 80% of the electorate. So they're scary when it comes to politicians, because politicians need their vote, don't they? So they don't want to do anything that will upset the majority of the electorate. And so I think it's very important that we do engage them and sit down and discuss with them and let them understand that what is currently on the table isn't what they think it is. I think it's very
what
important.
is on the table would rather reduce the illegal cultivation
Absolutely.
of cannabis.
Absolutely.
For recreational.
And you see, the other important thing about that as well is that in beginning the debate about recreational cannabis, what people need to understand as well is that they would have to go through a process which would ensure that cannabis for recreational use would be safe. Because right now, nobody tests the soil. None of the farmers do that. They don't test the soil, so they don't know if there's toxins in the soil. They don't know what the deficiencies are in the soil, but they just cultivate the cannabis.
Right.
And then they sell it. And then you ingest it, however you ingest it. You may be ingesting toxins that could kill you. And now what we need to establish to make cannabis safe and help you to regulate it is having dispensaries all over the place. Accra, Takrady, Kumasi, Tamale, Wa, Bolga. We need to have safe places that you can actually go and purchase cannabis that is safe. Cannabis that has been grown in accordance with the regulation that ensures that is 100% safe. This too is something that will root out illegal cultivation. Because if you could come into my dispensary and you've bought something from somewhere else, and I say, oh, where did you buy that? And you say, oh, I bought that in the Volta region. I could say, look, let me test that for you so that you could see how safe it could be. Yeah. Now, if when I test it in front of you, you actually witness the fact that there are toxins in there, you wouldn't buy from those people anymore. You'd rather come in to a safe place, which is a dispensary, and purchase your cannabis for recreational use from me. Because you know what you're getting is 100% clean, it's 100% safe, it's not going to poison you anyway, it's not going to cut your life short. And I think these are the type of discussions that we need to have with the churches, with the parliamentarians, with the other stakeholders that are there, so that they begin to grasp what we are talking about, so that they begin to lose that phobia about the use of cannabis for recreational purposes.
So Nana, how soon do you expect this? Are you exerting pressure? Because if there are 100 farm groups, clearly there is interest there to get the law into fruition so they can all
look, there are people from companies like Canopy Growth from Canada and various other companies from the USA, Switzerland, Holland. They've been camping here. They've been staying hotels. They've been in hotels for almost 3 years.
Wow.
Waiting. So it's not just us, but there's huge interest because you see, if you cultivate in Switzerland and in some parts of the USA and even in Canada, you can only cultivate once or twice a year because the temperature there, the climate there isn't the same here. We're sitting very close or on the equator. It's the ultimate in climates for the cultivation of cannabis, the ultimate. So what we have in those other countries, they are using electricity to keep lights on and keep fans going, extractor fans and all this thing. The cost involved to cultivate is humongous, whereas here it's not. So they've all come over with their briefcases full of money to come and give people, can we have a license and what have you. So it's not just us, but the interest here is huge.
As well.
It is very huge, and it is very important that these conversations take on a dimension that people begin to understand that, look, we have lots of children here that are suffering from epilepsy. They're being fed with opioids that cannot help them. When we give these children cannabis oil, it reduces the seizures and eventually bring the seizures to an end. There are people here who have Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and other degenerative diseases. They're trying to recover from stroke, from high blood pressure, and a wide variety of things. And I can tell you as a fact that I've known many of these people who are now taking cannabis oil and they are recovering. People who have had strokes, paralyzed down one arm, are now moving as if they didn't have a problem in the first place.
Right.
I have numerous examples. We are dealing with children who have autism, cannot speak. They are now saying 1 and 2 words. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get
the
you.
power of this plant is absolutely amazing. What it requires is a human understanding. And we need to understand that even without the predicament that we're in terms of our GDP now, that when you release this, we will become a nation that when we talk about sovereignty, we will actually mean sovereignty. When we talk about...
That's taking the narrative from them.
Yes, when we talk about Ghana beyond aid, we will really mean Ghana beyond aid. Because this is something that can lift up our GDP like no other. Let's face it, we are losing on the oil. We're losing on the gold.
Cocoa.
We're losing on the cocoa. Look at the cocoa. Look, I mean, every year, we're going in for loans on cocoa. Why? When we are the second largest producer. We are losing on the gas.
Only to Ivory Coast, right?
We're losing on the bauxite. All our natural resources we are losing on. And it's terrible. I mean, I've got to be perfectly honest with you. There's a syndrome. Anything that the government is involved in that they manage, there's a big problem. There's a loss. There's a deficit. It's not working for our country. And that's why we say that this industry is the people's industry. It's not something that must be taken over by the government. It's something that is for the people and should be run by the people. And the government should tax us. At the moment, in terms of agriculture, when it comes to tax, we're only looking at 3%. Government, you can tax us more than that.
Wow. Yeah. On that note, Nana, I think we will need to have a second, part to this conversation.
We need to have part 2.
Yes, unfortunately, we've run out of time. But I learned a lot. I hope you learned that too, because before I came in, I had no idea. I didn't know, there was a difference between hemp and cannabis and the percentage, the THC level 0.23 is what is allowed, and that, with the cannabis for recreational purpose, you're looking at 5 and over. And its implications and everything. I'm so glad that you explained that to us. But I know we'll have another opportunity to talk about this. And I hope that for those of you at home watched, if you didn't, you can go back and watch a playback of it on our Facebook and Twitter pages and see for yourself. I think I have one last question I want to sneak in. How do you feel, when police go around swooping and arresting people for that?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I mean, I look at their faces and they're smiling as they burn United States dollars. United States dollars that we need. And funnily enough, the irony of it is that those countries that are cultivating and making the money, those are the countries we run to with our cap in hand saying, can you give us a loan, please? But can I say before I go, can I just say that our offices are in East Legon.
Okay.
We're off the Labaoleshi Road.
Okay.
It's Hempire House, Hempire Ghana Limited, Hempire House, 8 and Yeti Close, off Labaoleshi Road, East Legon. You can get me on WhatsApp on 0244 264 221. You can Google Hempire Ghana Limited. We also have our websites up. Just type Hempire Ghana. You'll get into our websites. And if you're interested in becoming a ganja farmer, let's put it that way, please do contact us. We'll be happy to take you through the procedure. You say the right process, right? Nana, come and see us. Nana, thank you. If alcohol and cigarettes can be legal, why not marijuana? I've learned so much on this show. I mean, before we started the show, I had no knowledge that hemp or cannabis or marijuana had different, were different types or meant different things. And that's
the industrialization of it meant that you could only harvest one that has a certain quantity of THC, which is a 0.23%. I believe Nana Kwaku Agyemang would have to come back for us to do a part 2 of it, because a lot of people need more education. I hope you have learned a lot. I learned a lot about it, and like he's saying, Tampi farmer or marijuana farmer, who knows, I might just become a Tampi farmer when the law comes to fruition. My name is Bridget Otu. Leave your comments on all our social media platforms, on Twitter or on Facebook. See you next week.